So I'm interested, what's like the time frame? You said you had about 40 minutes with returning clients?
45.
45 minutes with returning clients.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
within 45 minutes, how much of that time would you actually spend doing in KT? Would it just be like a few minutes, rechecking a few things, or would it be?
It's fast.
Yeah, just fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're not machine gunning.
Yeah.
Like you're not exhausting the patient with a ton of testing and trying to guess. And patients also, if you're unsure, sometimes they're unsure about you.
Yeah.
And so you have to project an element of confidence. And I'm very communicative with my patient. I say, okay, let's do your gait analysis. We watch the gait. Like look and see how this right shoulder drops, left shoulder hikes. Let's look and see how you don't access, the shift phase of gait. Look at how you don't toe off. And then I say, okay, that leads me to think that we need to look at this. And so then I'll show them, just basic some movements that may be limiting them. Then I say, okay, this is another supporting system. This is exhibit B that we need to assess this within KT. And then maybe I'll perturb them and say, okay, I think there might be a problem with your lateral subsystem. Let me push you around a little bit and see if you're able to maintain stability. And when they're not, I say, okay, let me show you in KT. So it's not like I do 5 minutes of NKT. The entire thing is NKT.
Yeah.
It's just, I think NKT is so much more than muscle testing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why sometimes people don't take NKT because they think it's just muscle testing. They're like, oh, well, I know muscle testing. And they're like, NKT is not just muscle testing. It's a lot more than that. It's a beautiful tool to assess proprioception and also for me to solidify everything that I saw. You don't have to use it like I do, of course. That's just how I use it, and it's extremely effective for the patient to get to see that, wait a minute, I was weak and now I'm not.
Yeah.
And that relates to my gait. It relates to my perturbation. It relates to everything that they saw. I photograph everything, play it back for them, do before and afters, put it all in their Dropbox afterwards, because I want them to know that this wasn't a 45-minute thing. This is something that they have for a lifetime that I don't delete.
Yeah.
I want them to see where they were on that day and what changes they made and how they now have the opportunity to make their changes sustainable through the movement corrections and the assignments within KT.
Yeah, it's great. So
yeah, the muscle testing itself is probably like 5 minutes of check and recheck, if that.
Yeah.
But like the entire thing is about NKT.
When you have those first-time clients, and let's say, somebody comes in and they've just never even heard of NKT before. They have no clue anything about muscle testing, or really don't have a lot of expectations for what you're going to do with them. How would you explain NKT to them, or do you? And are there certain tests you always do at the beginning of your NKT, or that you never do? What does that initial NKT process look like for you with a new client?
For the vast majority of people, I send an intake for them, by the way, like pretty big intake. Okay. And so I ask them to list their scars, list their injuries, list their falls, like their surgeries. And so if there's a scar relationship, that's probably something I'm going to assess first. And if they have a respiratory problem or a known core weakness, a disc herniation, that's something I'm probably going to focus on first. And so I already have a priority list set because I have a really extensive intake. Mine's more of a Chinese medicine intake because I look at things very holistically. And then I added questions at the end that are very NKT based. But I have a high price point, and so and I do that for a reason. People come to see me like last. They usually don't come to see me first unless they've already seen like HSS. They've already been through like the standard thing, and so I don't feel like I have to explain myself much at all.
Yeah, that's helpful.
I do. Yeah, and to be honest with you, Brandon, I send them a little excerpt when they're trying to book an appointment with me. I'm like, look, I'm not a standard chiropractor. This is what I do. I do a mixture of SFMA, DNS, and KT. Here are their websites if you want to take a look. And so they already hopefully have checked out my website and looked and kind of seen some of the things that I do. And a lot of times I don't have to explain a lot, but then I ask them, the very first question I ask them is like, who referred you to me again? And then I say, what do you expect out of this visit? Like, what do you think is going to happen? And I want to see where they're at. If they've already experienced NKT before, then it's easy. But if they haven't, I say, okay, well, we're going to do some movement assessing, and we're going to do some different various testing and see where, if you have like a weak link that we can improve, we can optimize you. And I very rarely use the word weakness, and I try to tell them we're going to optimize the system. They already feel
Okay.
weak. They feel broken while they're in my office. So they don't need help feeling more broken. So I stay very optimistic and I say, look, let's educate you. And I got to tell you, it's not like in the first 5 minutes, for a new patient, the entire hour is spent educating. It's very, even when I'm doing a release and I'm sitting there doing a release, I'm talking to them and saying, look, this is how a scar impedes upon movement. This is how, you're not weak. This is a motor control issue. And the entire time I'm educating.
You said that you don't use the word weakness. I mean, what are some of the cues or things that you might describe? We know things like, meet my pressure or different cues that David has taught us through seminars. Are there like additional cues you use or, any kind of other verbal instruction that sometimes is helpful for what you do with people?
Probably nothing special. If you guys have been to my seminars, then you know it's basically pretty standard, operating system. But I use the term weak in the clear with my colleagues of NKT. But for my patient, when they hear the word weak, they have like a psychosocial that interferes with my biomechanical assessment. So I tend not to use that word. I'll just say this is suboptimized. Let's optimize it. But for the cues, I mean, your standard, deep breath in as you're exhaling, beat my pressure. Don't let them say, like I've had students do this. When you say breathe out and beat my pressure, they will hold their breath at the end in Valsalva while you're testing and give you false positives. So make sure they're exhaling as you meet the pressure. That's a good, point. Because if they fully exhale, they will brace. And you'll get a false negative or positive. But I'm going to tell you the same thing David does. Test a lot lighter than you think and crescendo up. Feel with that soft focus, but be looking everywhere, like look a little bit everywhere, like feel the test, but look in other places for those compensatory movements. And if I'm not sure about the compensator, I'll ask them to compensate. I'll say, what do you have to do to make this strong for me? And I tell all the newcomers that, like, if you're not sure, the patient will show you. If a test is kind of weak in the clear, just ask them, hey, how do you make this strong? And then they'll go right to it.
Wow. That's keep it simple, stupid. That's a great one.
God, that's the best part of David Weinstock. I can overthink anything. I can over cerebralize, use logic to talk myself right out of a really good assessment. But David never does that. I've watched David treat, and he's quite fun to watch. He seems to have this like natural instinct of where to go, and a lot of things are instinct. And I think people they forget that 99% of their neurotransmitters are in their gut. And so they're always ignoring that gut feeling and trying to be logical. But he's very logical and also very good at not ignoring the gut feeling and keeping things simple. And the way that I keep things simple, because I tend to over cerebralize everything, is to listen to my patient. I shut up and I listen. I hardly talk at all in my visits unless I'm educating them on something. But they do all the talking. They tell you everything if you just listen. Be a good listener. Be a really, really good listener would be my advice.
Yeah, excellent. Just skipping back to when you first started, or maybe even you still have this now a little bit, but if there's a point in a session where you think to yourself, wow, I'm super confused about my testing or where to go, or like, I am just like blanking right now. I did all these tests and I got my false positives and this came up really confusing. Where do you go? Do you restart? Do you keep testing? How do you clear the confusion and figure out what you're doing with people?
I would go back to intrinsics. If you're like searching, like let's say you're barking down a lateral subsystem tree and you're trying to get coronal plane stability on, but you miss that they have an intrinsic core stability problem, a motor control issue there, then if you're not getting the results that you suspected from your logic of your testing, then most likely there's something higher up the kinetic chain that you need to focus on. Like I do this all the time. Like I'll see a really bad transition in gait or really bad whatever propulsion, and then I'll want to focus on biceps femoris and the relationship with the peroneals or opposite multifidus. But then I try to chase that. I'm not getting the results. And then, I don't do this anymore, but I used to as a rookie. Then I would say, oh, wait a minute, did I miss something in the breathing assessment? And go back to the breathing assessment. And they have like a TVA bilateral week in the care, no lateral expansion of the ribs. And I'm like, oh, that's why the DLS thing is not giving me what I want.
Yeah.
And so you don't forget, and I hate to be a broken record, but don't forget that there's a priority list. There's intrinsic core and then extrinsics. And for my people in level 1 who haven't taken level 2 yet, sorry to give you, I don't want to give you a boost on level 2, but I do want to give you a boost to take level 2 because it makes your life easier.
Yeah, it does.
Like if you follow a priority list, then you'll have less of those moments. I have very few of those moments, very, very few, like if any anymore, because I try not to just go by what I saw, but understand the priority list and say, okay, here's all the things that I saw. Where in all this is the priority, and then start with the priority list. Not to get shaken up by, if someone has right knee pain, they're not going to leave without, a quality assessment of the knee, but they should definitely have an assessment of how their hip core affects their knee. And if that's a higher priority and there's a loss there, then you have to address it. You can't just address the knee. So local and global at the same visit.
Yeah. That's always one of the first things I tell to my clients is the more information you give me, the more helpful I can be. If you just don't tell me anything, then it's going to be really hard for me to help you. Yeah, I know.
Really good advice.
Well, let me just ask you a couple last questions here. Straying away from all these technical questions and origin story questions, which have been super helpful. Thank you for those. What's like some more resources that you spent time reading or videos watching or things kind of outside NKT, but that ended up surprisingly maybe helping you with NKT? David names the motor control book that he read that, was no longer being printed. Apparently now you can get it again. But are there any like really pivotal books that you were like, oh, I opened this up and I read this book and, oh, wow, that totally made NKT really clear in my mind? Were there any resources like that
Yes.
that you could advise students to read?
Yes, Movement by Gray Cook should be mandatory reading for all movement specialists. I mean, it's so good. It's like a textbook, so you can't like sit down and like read it. But you can, refer to it and read it in small pieces, and it's like $10 on Kindle. It's so efficient cost-wise. If you're a movement specialist, you're interested in like movement corrections too. It's a wonderful resource. Human Locomotion by Tom Michaud. Fantastic book if you really don't understand gait. Like if I'm a gait analyst, so I definitely feel pretty good about gait. I'm still learning a lot, and I think I'll be learning for a lifetime about human gait, but because it's so complicated. Being bipedal, oh my gosh, way more complicated than a quadruped. So that book it's written by a chiropractor. It's fantastic, just fantastic. I love functionalmovement.com. I tend to love and gravitate towards the kettlebell. The corrections on there are fantastic. The assessments, the screens are amazing. I think they produce a lot of great information, and you can't hate on a screen that's basically in every single professional sports team now. I mean, it's, very, very, well utilized movement screen and can definitely help someone who is, needs something to help with their NKT, help them know where to go a little bit more. If that's your game, which it definitely is mine. Those are great places to start. If you're confused about like foot mechanics and how things work up the connect chain, I would recommend Gary Ward's book, What the Foot. It's fantastic.
Excellent.
Yeah. Gary himself, I think, is level 2 or level 3 certified. I think level 2 certified in KT. Great books. On the cuff, I'm trying to. Anything written by Leon Chateau. CHATOW. Oh my God. His book on chronic pelvic pain. Oh my God. If you're dealing with pelvic floor patients or any type of pelvic pain patients, oh my gosh, just fantastic. His breathing book, his breathing disorders book is just phenomenal. I tend to love everything that he writes. Katie Bowman is an amazing biomechanist. Her books are really simple. Move Your DNA is really, really nice book for people that need to understand that movement can help with a lot of pain disorders. So if you're trying to understand pain better, the NOI group, Lorimer Mosley, Greg Lehman, like these people are the forefront researchers on pain, and they do a great job of teaching about not only treating pain through movement, but understanding that there's a lot going on in someone's mind that might be affecting the biomechanics. So if you're trying to just to understand that better so you can help people better, that's just understanding pain is a really helpful thing when you're dealing with pain.
Yeah.
Not to say the obvious, but I find a lot of people don't study pain, and they probably should, so they can understand that, because a lot of people feel bad they don't get people better in 4 visits or whatever, and then they're not this magician like woo and poof my magic NKT wand, and they're like, wait a minute, they might have way more going on, like systemically or psychologically. You might be giving them everything they need biomechanically, but they might have something, as David would say, limbic going on. Like, you have to know when to co-care with other people. Like, if it's systemic, if there's bilateral patterning that you can't fix with intrinsic core, then perhaps they have a circulatory issue or a diabetic neuropathy issue. And so you need to have good people in your systems to be able to refer to and co-care. You will not lose patients. You'll get a lot more back, I promise. And you'll also do what's right for the patient, which is always about the patient and the client, and not about you. You will build your business, even though you see people only a couple of times. I'm living proof that this is true. I may only get 2 or 3 shots, with a patient. So if I don't reduce their pain or get them in a system that reduces their pain with multiple, I've not done my job, and that's what I'm expected to do. And some people I have for the long haul, they're looking to not only get it out of their, pain, but to optimize their system fully. And so they might be with me for a long time, but like, increasing your resources, not just reading more, but also networking more, like finding people within the NKT network that do other things besides, NKT is really nice. I think that's valuable.
Yeah. Well, Kathy, last question here. If you could give just the, do you have any like mottos or slogans or things that you just always tell yourself over and over again? I mean, kind of like you were saying earlier, the priorities in your checklist, and look at intrinsic core. What's like the Kathy bumper sticker that is just a thing you always keep in your head when you're working with people? Just a tidbit of advice that people can try to remember.
I have a few. Only one of them is mine. So the one thing that I remember is most people are saying the same thing with a different vernacular. So I try not to be cognitively dissonant, try to really open my mind and hear what other practitioners are saying that I might be co-caring with. So that's A. Number 2, doctor equals teacher, which I believe is Hippocrates. So the understanding that a doctor is a teacher first, and they're not there to fix the problem, but to help someone to fix their own problem, to teach them. In my office on the whiteboard is written, more is not better, better is better. And that is, a lot of my patients want more exercise and more things to do. And I tell them, no, NKT protocol is you get 2 maximum. That's it. 2 sets of correctives. And better is better. You have a priority list too. Like if you're stuck on the sagittal plane and you want to give them transverse, but they haven't earned sagittal plane yet, they have to earn the sagittal plane first. And so I tell them more is not better, better is better. You have to own this first, and then I can give you more. And so they see that every single time they walk in, it's the first thing they see is more is not better, better is better. That's Brett Jones. Okay. A Master Chief, strong first instructor. He's an incredible athletic trainer. And then Greg Cook's don't rob health to pay fitness. That one's set on a daily basis. Because people will try to run, like they want to run like 20 miles on knee pain. And I'm like, wait a minute. Are you trying to pay fitness or are you trying to pay health? And so I may have to restrict them from a little bit of running for a little while until they get their health back up. And then, don't ever rob health to pay fitness. One of my favorite Greg Cook quotes ever. Yeah, those are great. I'm going to be using those soon. Don't forget David's too. There are no absolutes. Just because. That's right. That's one of my favorites too. Like, don't get stuck in a thought, process just because you can convince yourself that it makes sense. Just because it makes sense doesn't make it right. So, just remember there are no absolutes and there's always outliers. Okay, well, yeah. Well, Kathy, thanks so much. This has really been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you. So much good advice, and I'm really appreciative of your time. So I'm happy to help, and if anyone ever wants to email me and they have questions or are having rough moments, you're on the ledge, drkathydooley@gmail.com. I'm right there on the NKT page with the practitioners list. So, and email me anytime. Find me on Facebook if you want to send me a message. You'll always get a reply back.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Kathy.
Thanks, Brandon.